Okay, class, we are going to start a new topic which is about comparison of analog and digital. Sorry, uh, comparison will come later on. First, we will talk about the types of measuring instruments. So we discussed in our previous sessions about different parameters which we have to measure in our daily life or at workplace. Then we talked about the measurement itself. What are the features of good measurement? A good measurement should be accurate, it should be precise. Then we talked about parameters of measuring instruments, that a good measuring instrument should have certain parameters depending on their use. These parameters are listed here, which we discussed in our previous session. Now we will talk about the types of measuring instruments. So measuring instruments, they are divided into two major categories: analog instrument and digital instrument. So here is a comparison. In this table you will see a comparison between analog and digital instrument. The most common example is shown here. This is a analog clock here and the digital clock. This is the most common. What is the difference between the two? On an analog clock, you see a scale, a marking, fixed marking on the display, and there are some needles. You call it hands, hour hand and minute hand and second hand, which moves on that scale. And by reading it, by reading the hours hand or the minutes hand, you can tell the time. What is the time? While the digital is different. Digital straight away it gives you the numbers on the display to read. So you can easily read what is the time. For example, here it's 38 minutes past 12. So this is the major difference between the two. Another example is analog temperature instrument and digital temperature instrument. So you will come across a similar situation that on the analog instrument, you see a scale is marked on its display. Okay, and the resolution steps, you can see there are the divisions in between 0 and 10 and 10 and 20. So this is the resolution step, and the needle is moving on the scale and you get the reading, while the digital one straight away gives you the numbers and with a unit, and you can easily read the reading. So for analog, the instrument whose output is the continuous function of time, and they have a constant relation to the input. So what does it mean? It means as soon as the input means the parameter which you are measuring. So analog instrument is directly connected with the input, and it is showing the reading as a function of time. It means on a time scale, as soon as your input changes, immediately your needle changes. It also moves. Okay. While the digital instrument, they represent the measured value in the form of digital number. Okay. So again, I will give you a common example. When you drive a car, some cars have analog speedometer, some cars have digital speedometer. So if you race your car, you increase the speed of your car, then you see that the analog speedometer, the needle constantly moves it on the scale. It immediately shows whenever you put the pedal, you press the pedal, you give more gas, the car accelerates. Immediately the needle start moving on the scale. Okay, because it is directly linked with your speed. Okay, and it immediately shows the change, and the needle moves on the scale to show you the speed. while the digital speedometer reading will depend on the resolution, and second thing is the conversion. What happens that your input parameter, which is the speed of the car, it is first converted in from analog to digital quantity, and then that digital quantity is displayed as a number on the screen. Now it depends how much resolution you want to keep. For example, you want to see the change after every 0.5 kilometer per hour or after every 0.1 kilometer per hour. So digital meter will change its reading depending on that resolution step. Okay. For example, you have a digital speedometer whose resolution step is 1 kilometer per hour. It means when your car is speeding up from 1 to 2 kilometer per hour, it will show the reading as 1 kilometer per hour. After that, when your car gains more speed, it will show the reading as 2 kilometer per hour. But in between 1 and 2, it will not show. Why? Because its resolution step is 1 kilometer per hour. So after every change of 1 kilometer per hour, it will give you the next reading. In between, it will not show. So if you want a higher resolution, then you have to redesign your speedometer, which can show the in between readings of 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, all the way up to 0.9 and 1, and similarly further that. So that's the difference between the analog and digital meters. Mostly the analog meters are less accurate and digital are more accurate because digital are using new technology. They are giving more accurate reading, while the mechanical or sorry, the analog instruments, they are using mechanical parts and mechanical movement. And in mechanical spring based movement or pivot movement, it consumes energy. Spring movement, so it will use some energy from the observed parameter, so its reading will not be that much accurate. While the digital instruments, they are using electronic parts, they are electronic components, they which are using very less energy, so their readings are usually more accurate. So analog requires more power to work for the same reason which I just explained, because there are mechanical parts involved, so they need more power to work, while the digital, they require less power to work. Analog instruments are usually more sensitive as they reflect, the changes are reflected immediately on them. Sensitivity means as soon as the input or the parameter under measurement, as soon as it changes slightly, immediately the meter reading is also changed. So in analog, how the meter reading is read? It is read by the movement of the needle on the scale. So as soon as the input is changing, the needle also immediately moves and it shows the change happened in the parameter which are you observing. So that's how the analog meters are slightly more sensitive. Digital meters are usually less sensitive as the changes reflect only after defined resolution step, as I just explained you about the digital speedometer and analog speedometer. So analog are cheap because they are old technology and they offer less features. Digital are expensive because they are new technology and they usually offer extra features or more additional features. So in analog, it has less resolution and digital has high resolution. So that was the basic difference between analog and digital instrument. I will stop the session